So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Das Goswami, Volume 4, in every town and village around the world, 1968 to 1971. So we were starting new chapter, chapter 29, Unlimited Opportunity, Limited Time. So Prabhupada had come to India, now he's gone back to USA, and he's gone to Montreal, Canada, August 1968. Srila Prabhupada was in his room speaking with several disciples. So, Annapurna, you have got some news, he asked. Annapurna was a young British girl. A few months ago, her father had written from England that he might be able to provide a house if some devotees came there. Yes, she replied. So, what's our next program? She was reticent. That letter from your father is encouraging. Yes, he encourages me, but he says he can't provide any place if you come there. Prabhupada looked disappointed. That's all right. It's up to Krishna. When we go to someone to preach, we have to stand before them with folded hands, with all humility. My dear sir, please take to Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada, Pradyumna spoke up. I was reading a book by this big atheist Swami. There are some letters in the back of the book, and I was looking at them. Atheist Swami's book, Prabhupada said, we have nothing to do with it. I wasn't looking at this philosophy, Pradyumna replied. I was just looking at the techniques he used when he was in America. He wanted to go to Europe, so he had a man, a rich benefactor, who went on a 6-week tour of France, England, Germany, Switzerland, Holland, and then back, arranging lectures. That's how he did most of his tour. He had one or two influential people, and they arranged everything. And the lectures were arranged, and the society. So you can arrange like that, Prabhupada asked. I was thinking that there would be a Royal Asiatic Society in London. I think Thakur Bhaktivinoda was a member of that. But where is Thakur Bhaktivinoda Sangha Association? Prabhupada asked. Well, Pradyumna continued. Still, there may be some people you could open correspondence with them. They might be interested in sponsoring you. Is there anything about Krishna in that Swami's speech? Prabhupada asked. No. Prabhupada said thoughtfully. In England, he would have no place to stay. Pradyumna might talk of influential persons traveling ahead and making all the arrangements. But where are such persons? He was a shy girl who could barely speak up, whose father would not help, and Pradyumna reading an atheist Swami and talking of a Royal Asiatic Society, but nothing practical. Prabhupada had plans, though. He had asked Mukunda and Shamsundar to go to London and try to establish an ISKCON center. They had agreed and would be arriving in Montreal from San Francisco in a few days. Can we imagine? It's 1968, August 1968, and Prabhupada had started the society, registered it in July 1966, and didn't even have our own Bhagavad Gita printed. Had somehow started centers in New York, San Francisco, now Montreal, and Boston, and one more other place. And now they are thinking, probably thinking of going to London to start centers, start preaching over there. Can't imagine this. And how much training, Mukunda and Shamsundar, how much training they must have had? Hardly any. But it's their dedication and Prabhupada's empowering them that really made a difference. Let's see. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada's own spiritual master, had wanted Krishna consciousness in Europe. During the 1930s, he had sent his most experienced Swamis to go to London. But they had returned, nothing accomplished. It wasn't possible to teach Krishna consciousness to the Malechas, they had complained. Europeans could not sit long enough to hear the Vaishnava philosophy. One of the sannyasis had met Lord Zetland, who had inquired curiously, Swamiji, can you make me a Brahman? The sannyasi had assured Lord Zetland he could, certainly, if Zetland would give up meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex. I'm impossible, Lord Zetland had replied. And the sannyasis had accepted this response as a standard for all Europeans. The sannyasis had returned to India. Vaishnavism could never take hold in the West. Prabhupada had faith that this his disciples would succeed, but they would help him establish ISKCON centers in Europe, just as they had in North America. Certainly, such success would greatly please Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Prabhupada told of a man who found a gourd lying on the road. Gourd means Loki, and picked it up, and then found a stick and a wire and picked them up. In themselves, the three parts were useless. By putting the gourd, the stick, and the wire together, the man made it veena and began to play beautiful music. Similarly, Prabhupada had come to the West and found some rejected youths lying here and there, and he himself had been rejected by the people of New York City. But by Krishna's grace, the combination had become successful. If his disciples remained sincere and followed his orders, they would succeed in Europe. Three married couples, Mukunda and Janaki, Shyamsundar and Malati, with their infant daughter Saraswati, and Gurudas and Yamuna, arrived in Montreal, eager to travel to London. So these three couples and little daughter Saraswati, infant daughter, she was probably 1 or 2 years old only at that time. And Prabhupada sent them to London to preach, to open centers. These three couples had begun the temple in San Francisco, where they had had association with Srila Prabhupada. They had helped Prabhupada introduce Kirtan, Prasadam, and Rath Yatra among the hippies of Haight-Ashbury. Now they were eager to help him introduce Krishna consciousness in London. Prabhupada asked the three couples to remain with him in Montreal for a week or so that he could train them to perform Kirtan expertly. Chanting Hare Krishna was not a theatrical performance, but an act of devotion, properly conducted only by pure devotees, not by professional musicians. Yet if Prabhupada's disciples became proficient in the singing, Londoners would better appreciate Krishna consciousness. The thought of these devotees preaching in England made Prabhupada ecstatic. With their kirtan, they would become more popular than the yogis with their gymnastics and impersonal meditation. As the London program became a tangible fact, Prabhupada began to reveal more plans. Prabhupada already seemed to have hundreds of detailed plans for implementing Krishna consciousness around the world. He only needed willing helpers. In the daily Kirtan rehearsals, Prabhupada taught the devotees to chant Hare Krishna and other devotional songs, beginning with a slow tempo and building gradually. He would regularly interrupt and have them begin again. Listening carefully as Yamuna led the chanting, Prabhupada would stop her at times to correct her Sanskrit pronunciation. After 2 weeks in Montreal, the London party came together for a final meeting with Prabhupada. He was sending them to start a center in London to fulfill his spiritual master's dream. The sannyasis Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had sent to London, Prabhupada told them, had lectured in a few places, posed for photos with lords and ladies, and then returned to India. But Prabhupada wanted his disciples to go out boldly, chant the Harinam, and attract others to chant. Lord Chaitanya had personally used this method while touring South India. Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that whoever saw Lord Chaitanya became ecstatic in love of God. Then that ecstatic person would chant the holy name and ask others to chant. And when they saw that person, they would too become ecstatic. Thus, the waves of ecstatic love of Krishna would increase. Prabhupada predicted that when the devotees chanted Hare Krishna, the people of London would hear the mantra, become devotees, and then enlighten others. Krishna consciousness would grow. The only requirement was that the chanting be done purely, without any material motivation. Prabhupada's enthusiasm was contagious, and as he spoke, he filled his disciples with the same contagious enthusiasm. When Mukunda asked Prabhupada if he had any specific instructions, Prabhupada replied with a story. In his youth, he had once seen a movie of Charlie Chaplin. The setting was a formal ball held outdoors, and off from the main dance arena were lanes with benches where couples sat. Some mischievous boys had plastered glue on one of the benches, and a young man and his girlfriend came and sat down. When the young man got up, Prabhupada laughed as he told the story. His tails tore up the middle. Means the coat, that time they used to wear, it was a long coat. and it got torn up because of the glue. Prabhupada told how the couple had returned to the dance, unaware of what had happened. But now they drew stares from the other dancers, wondering why he was suddenly attracting so much attention. The young man went into the dressing room and saw in the mirror his ripped coat tails. Deliberately, he then tore his coat all the way up to the collar, returned to his partner, and began dancing exuberantly. Then another man joined, ripping his own coat tails and dancing with his partner as if to compete with the first couple. One by one, the other dancers followed, ripping their coat tails and dancing with the band. By the conclusion of the story, the devotees in Prabhupada's room were all laughing uproariously. But finally, their laughter subsided and the meeting ended. Not until the devotees were already at the airport did Mukunda, talking with Shyamsundar, begin to appreciate and marvel at how expertly Prabhupada had answered his question. By their bold, enthusiastic, confident preaching, they would attract people. Not everyone would immediately join in the dancing, as had the people in the Charlie Chaplin film. The devotees might even be considered crazy at first, but they would be offering Krishna consciousness, the highest and rarest gift. And intelligent people would gradually appreciate this, even if at first they scoffed. By Prabhupada's order, his London-bound disciples holding kirtan in public would present a profile quite different from the reserved profile of his sannyasi godbrothers. His godbrothers had imitated the British ways, but Prabhupada wanted the British to imitate the Vaishnavas. To appear in the streets of London with shaven heads and dhotis would require boldness, but it would be exciting to chant carrying out the order of Lord Chaitanya, and the people would follow gradually, but definitely. It was the will of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada's visit to Montreal took place early in the summer of 1968, 6 months after his return to America. In India, from July to December of 1967, he had recovered his health, and on December 14th, he had returned to San Francisco. After a few weeks, he had gone to Los Angeles, where a small group of disciples had opened a storefront temple in the middle-class Black and Hispanic neighborhood. The storefront was bare and the location secluded. Prabhupada had stayed there 2 months, delivering lectures, holding kirtans, and giving strength and inspiration to his disciples. Although buzzing in his head had made working difficult, he had found the warm climate and sunshine agreeable and had continued to translate Srimad Bhagavatam, dictating tapes and sending them to Boston for typing. So Boston had become the center for typing and printing. A reporter from Life had come to Srila Prabhupada's apartment and had interviewed him for an upcoming Life feature, The Year of the Guru. When the story had appeared, it had mixed Srila Prabhupada and his movement with the coverage of other gurus. Although the article had carried a large color photo of Srila Prabhupada and favorably described a reporter's visit to the New York ISKCON Center, Prabhupada had said that being grouped with gurus who taught concoctions of yoga and meditation was not good. In May, a few months after leaving Los Angeles, Prabhupada had paid a first visit to his ISKCON Center in Boston. There also he had found a few disciples based in a small storefront. He had lectured at many of the local universities, including Harvard and MIT. At MIT, addressing a gathering of students and faculty, he had challenged, where in this university is there a department to teach scientifically the difference between a living body and a dead body? Even MIT, the prestigious institute in US for technical institute. But there is no department that teaches what's the difference between living body and dead body and what happens after a body dies. The most fundamental science, the science of the living soul, was not being taught. After Boston, Srila Prabhupada had come to Montreal, and after 3 months in Montreal, Prabhupada flew to Seattle, where he stayed for 1 month. Then he briefly visited Santa Fe, New Mexico, where the ISKCON Center was a tiny, isolated storefront. Prabhupada's reasons for traveling from center to center were to train and convince each disciple and to speak with newcomers. Many young people came to hear, but Srila Prabhupada found the majority already ruined by illicit sex and drugs. They were rich men's sons, but they had become hippies, wandering the streets. By Krishna's grace, now some of them were being saved. Even while recuperating in India, Prabhupada had always thoughts of returning to America to continue his movement. The Indians had seemed interested only in sense gratification, like that of the Americans. But many American youths, disillusioned with their father's wealth, were not going to the skyscrapers or to their father's businesses. As Prabhupada had seen from his stay in New York City and San Francisco, thousands of youths were seeking an alternative to materialism. Frustrated, they were ripe for spiritual knowledge. The devotees, still neophytes, knew nothing of spiritual life, and in most cases, very little of material life. Because they were sincerely taking to Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada was confident that their shortcomings would not prevent their spiritual progress. Although naturally beautiful, these Western youths were now dirty and morose. Their beauty had become covered, but the chanting of Hare Krishna was reviving them. Prabhupada said, just as the monsoon revives the land of Vrindavan, making it fresh and verdant, and as the Vrindavan peacocks sometimes dance jubilantly, so the devotees, having shed their material bonds, were now ecstatically dancing and chanting the holy names. When a reporter asked Prabhupada if his disciples were hippies, Prabhupada replied, no, we are not hippies, we are happies. That was Prabhupada's way of saying. More than being a visiting lecturer or a formal guide, Srila Prabhupada was a spiritual father of his disciples. They accepted him as a real father, and he found them devoted and affectionate, far more than his own family had been. These young American boys and girls, the flower of your country, Prabhupada called them, had received the blessings of Lord Chaitanya and were delivering that blessing to their countrymen. Prabhupada said it was up to his American disciples to save their country. He was giving them the method, but they would have to implement it. Srila Prabhupada loved his disciples and they loved him. Out of love, he was giving them the greatest treasure, and out of love, they were following his instructions. This was the essence of his spiritual life. On the basis of this love, the Krishna consciousness movement would grow. Not surprisingly, some disciples had fallen away to their former materialistic way of living. But Prabhupada sought those sincere souls who would stay. That was the important thing, he said. One moon is more valuable than many stars, so even a few sincere workers would accomplish wonderful things. The sincere and intelligent would stay, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would empower them to carry out his desires for distributing love of Krishna. In this way, the devotees' lives would become perfect. Many disciples, in fact, already felt this happening. Krishna consciousness worked because they sincerely practiced it, and because Srila Prabhupada carefully and patiently tended the growing plants of transcendental loving service he had planted in their hearts. See the feelings for Prabhupada, and obviously Prabhupada's feelings for them, that was just different. Not just material feelings or material dealings. There's no such thing. All spiritual. Okay, I guess I can stop here. See anybody have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Prabhuji.
you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.